There's one last piece of configuration that we have to set up on our production Kubernetes cluster before we can actually deploy our application. If you open up your code editor right now and find your K8s directory, you'll recall that we had set up that ingress service. And the ingress service relied upon the ingress nginx project, which we had installed into our local Minikube cluster through the use of that Minikube add-ons enable ingress command. It was specifically that command that allowed us to use this nginx ingress into our local cluster. Now we have to go through a very similar setup on our production Kubernetes instance as well. So by default, the cluster that we just created right here has absolutely no idea of what a Kubernetes, or excuse me, a nginx ingress is, and we have to install it as a separate service. Now, as a quick reminder, when we install that ingress, we're going to get a couple of things created for us. First off, we've got the ingress config, which is that ingress config file we've already created inside of our project. But we have to go through that additional setup that is going to create the load balancer service, map it to a Google Cloud load balancer, and then also set up a deployment running the ingress controller and the actual nginx pod that's going to do the real routing. So this is all some additional setup or some additional installation process above and beyond everything that we've already done. Now, to get the setup directions for this, we can go back to the documentation for the ingress nginx page. So the URL for that right here. Remember, we do not want Kubernetes ingress, we want ingress nginx. And so I'm going to copy this URL right here, github.com/kubernetes/ingress nginx. And I'll open that in a new tab inside my browser. Now at the very top of this GitHub repository is the home page for this project. So I'm going to go there right now. And then at the top of this page is a section marked as deployment, which has directions on deploying this project out to either a local or production environment. So I'll go to deployment. And then inside of here, you'll recall that there's both the mandatory command and the provider specific commands on here as well. So if we wanted to, we could use this mandatory command, but we're going to do things a little bit differently this time around. If you go back up to the top here and look at contents, you'll notice that down at the bottom, the very last option is using Helm. So let's talk about exactly what Helm is. I'm going to click on that link, and it says right here that the controller can be installed using Helm. So what's Helm? Well, really straightforward. Helm is essentially a program that we can use to administer third-party software inside of our Kubernetes cluster. So just as we've been talking about, yeah, we want to get some outside software into our cluster, like this outside deployment and the pod that it controls. We want to install that as a third-party system, essentially. And to do so, we can either manually run all those apply commands with all those configs that are mapped up to them that we just saw inside the official documentation over here. So like all these apply commands that we've seen, but we can also make use of this command line tool called Helm. Helm is very commonly used with some of these more complicated projects where some of the setup might be a little bit challenging in nature. Now you might be thinking that there's nothing wrong whatsoever with using this very simple apply command right here that we had ran previously, and using the very simple apply command with GCE right here. Those look like they're really straightforward, but in this case, we're going to use Helm instead, because something that we're going to do a little bit later on is going to absolutely positively require us to use Helm. So this is a pretty good opportunity to get this thing set up and understand exactly how it works. Now, if you want to read some of the documentation on Helm, you can go to github.com/helm/helm. When we install Helm, we're going to actually get two separate pieces of software. The first is called Helm, and we refer to that as the client. In addition to the Helm client, which is essentially a CLI tool that we're going to issue commands to, we're also going to be installing something called Tiller. Tiller is a server running inside of our Kubernetes cluster, and it is what is responsible for modifying our cluster in some fashion and installing additional objects inside of it. You can really think of the relationship between Helm and Tiller as a relationship between the Docker client and the Docker server running on our machine. Very similar relationship. All right, so we're going to walk through the installation process for Helm in this section, and then after that, we'll take a quick break and start to walk through some configuration of the Tiller server, because it is going to require a little bit of extra setup. So to get started, I'm going to navigate to github.com/helm/helm. Oops, Helm. There we go. And then on this page, we're going to go to the official documentation. The link is right up here at the top, but do know that there is other information inside of this README right here that you might want to be aware of. In fact, even says right here, hey, two parts, a client and a server tiller. Okay, so we'll go to helm.sh, and then on the top right-hand side, we'll find git helm. Oh, God, I forgot about that. It just links you back to the GitHub page. Okay, we're gonna try this a different way. We're gonna go down to the README, and down here, it's gonna talk about install, and we're gonna go to the quick start guide right there. That's better. All right, that's what we're looking for. So if you can't find that link on the README, I'm gonna update the link on my diagram over here real quick, just so you can get to the same page as well. Okay, so on this page, we're going to go through one of these install directions. Now there's a lot of different ways of installing Helm because it assumes that you might be running Helm in production or you might be running it on your local computer. So one of the preferred ways that it lists inside of here to install Helm is it's going to say, oh yeah, you should install using Homebrew, which is a tool for installing software on a Mac OS machine. And clearly, we probably do not have access to Homebrew in our production Kubernetes environment, so we cannot use this preferred method. So instead, we're going to scroll down a little bit, or maybe a lot. We're going to go down, down, down. So here's the installing Helm section. You could also get here by clicking the link on the left-hand side. And then we'll go a little bit lower here, a little bit lower, a little bit lower. There we go. So from script, this is what we want to do. If you can't find this section, you can, of course, just do a Control F and search for from script like so. So to install Helm, we're going to copy these three commands right here and run them inside of our Cloud Console on Google Cloud. So I'm going to take the first command right here, not the $, I want just the curl. I'm going to copy that, and I'll paste it over here inside of my Cloud Shell. That's going to download that script. We then need to change the permissions for the script that we downloaded by running change mod. So I'll copy that. We'll run it as well. And then finally, we'll execute the script with /gethelm.sh. Okay, so that's going to do a little bit of setup, and then very quickly you'll see, okay, everything's good to go. Now it says right here, run Helm init, but I got to tell you, do not run Helm init yet. So we have to do a little bit of extra setup because we are running on Google Cloud. If you want to read about this extra setup, there's actually a section inside of this quick start guide. I think it might be just a little bit down here. Installing tiller, yeah, it's right here. Right, next one. Oh, come on, I know it's in here. Oh, gee whiz. Okay, we're just gonna do a search for it. Google Cloud. GCE, GKE, there we go. So on the GKE section right here, who knows where it is inside the document, do a Control F. You'll see that it says, hey, you need to do a little bit of extra setup here. So we're going to take a quick pause right now. When we come back to the next section, we're going to go through this additional little bit of setup to make sure that tiller gets set up correctly on our Kubernetes cluster. So quick break, and I'll see you in just a minute.